The narcissist's entire relational strategy depends on maintaining a psychological dynamic where others pursue, plead, and desperately seek their approval while they remain perpetually elusive and withholding. When someone breaks this pattern by refusing to chase, the narcissist experiences a gradual but devastating psychological deterioration that unfolds in predictable stages. Their carefully constructed power structure begins collapsing from within as they discover that their primary weapon, the threat of withdrawal, has lost all effectiveness against someone who no longer fears their absence. This reversal of the chase dynamic doesn't merely frustrate the narcissist, it systematically dismantles the psychological architecture that sustains their sense of superiority and control. The initial confusion and escalation. The narcissist's first response to someone refusing to chase is genuine bewilderment, mixed with certainty that the person must be playing hard to get or testing boundaries. They've conditioned their victims to pursue them after every withdrawal, every cold shoulder, and every manufactured distance. When this pursuit fails to materialize, their internal alarm systems activate, signaling that something fundamental has shifted in a way they don't yet fully comprehend. This confusion triggers an immediate escalation of their usual tactics. They increase the frequency and intensity of their breadcrumbing, offering slightly more attention than usual to reignite their victim's pursuit. They create increasingly dramatic situations designed to force engagement. They deploy flying monkeys to report back on their victim's emotional state or to subtly encourage reconciliation. Each failed attempt compounds their growing anxiety because they're discovering that their victim has developed immunity to manipulations that previously worked with reliable precision. The narcissist begins experiencing unfamiliar emotional territory, the discomfort of wanting someone's attention more than that person wants theirs. This role reversal feels profoundly destabilizing because their entire identity rests on being perpetually desired, never being the one who desires. They find themselves checking for responses with increasing frequency, interpreting neutral interactions for hidden meanings, and obsessively analyzing why their usual methods aren't producing the expected desperation. The erosion of their self-image. As days turn to weeks without their victim initiating contact or showing distress about their absence, the narcissist's grandiose self-image begins developing cracks. They've built their identity on being irresistible, unforgettable, and psychologically indispensable to anyone they've touched intimately. The evidence that someone is living peacefully without chasing them contradicts this foundational belief about their own magnetism and importance. This cognitive dissonance creates internal chaos that the narcissist attempts to resolve through increasingly desperate rationalizations. They tell themselves their victim must be pretending, must be dating someone else, must be too damaged to appreciate what they're losing. Yet beneath these defensive narratives, a more threatening truth begins seeping into their consciousness. Perhaps they weren't as special or irreplaceable as they believed. The narcissist's confidence, which appeared unshakable during the relationship, reveals itself as extraordinarily fragile when not continuously reinforced by their victim's pursuit and attention. They discover that their sense of self-worth was parasitically dependent on others' desperate desire for them. Without this external validation, they face the terrifying emptiness at their core, the void they've spent their entire life avoiding through manipulation and control. The collapse into desperate visibility. The final stage of the narcissist's crumbling arrives when they abandon all pretense of being aloof and desired, instead making increasingly transparent attempts to force their way back into their victim's awareness. They might suddenly appear in places they know their victim frequents, manufacture emergencies requiring immediate attention, or reach out with transparently manipulative messages about how much they've changed or how much they miss the connection. This desperation represents a complete inversion of their usual dynamic. The person who once positioned themselves as a prize to be won has transformed into someone begging for scraps of attention from the very person they once kept perpetually off balance. They experience the psychological torture they inflicted on others, the anxiety of waiting for responses, the humiliation of being ignored, and the powerlessness of wanting connection from someone who has moved beyond caring. The narcissist's crumbling accelerates as they realize their victim has discovered the secret they've hidden behind their grandiose facade. They need others far more than others need them, Their strategic withdrawal only worked as long as it created pursuit. Without that chase, they're left alone with themselves, a prospect so unbearable that it drives them to increasingly undignified displays of the very neediness they once scorned in others. The refusal to chase doesn't just frustrate the narcissist, it forces them to confront the fundamental lie their entire personality was constructed to avoid, that beneath their superiority performance lies desperate dependency, and without others' pursuit to validate their worth, they dissolve into the insignificance they have always feared they truly embodied.